Right, we've made it to week 12, getting close to the end of the semester, only a few weeks left. So let's look at what you've got going on for this week. So dealing with graphing lines and finding slope. And so we talked about graphs and charts last week and learned some about that. And now we're going to learn about how do we actually graph a line? How do we find the slope of a line and that kind of thing. And so assignments will be focused on that for this week. But the big thing I want to talk about in this video and focus on right now is your financial book review. And so this is kind of a big assignment we've been building towards the entire semester as you've been reading those financial books. And so I want to kind of look at what are the things that are required here. What will I be looking for as you write these papers? And so what it says should have 2 to 3 page paper, and so let's look at the things that are required that I'll be looking for. And so first thing on here in your rubric is some formatting things, and so 1 point each for all of these. And so 2 to 3 page paper, that'll be 1 point to make sure you're keeping it in that range. I don't want to have to read a whole bunch of 10-page papers, so try and keep to the 2 to 3 pages with that. Correct grammar and spelling, and so notice that's only 1 point out of these 40 points total for this assignment. So don't stress too much. This is a math class, not an English class, so not a lot of the focus is going to be on that spelling and grammar, but do try and get that correct as much as you can. So that I can understand what you're trying to say mainly. Do make sure it's double spaced. And then margins, it says normal margins. I'd say, something like 1-inch margins and a normal font size. And so 11 or 12 point size font is usually good. And then notice it also does need to have a title page and a resources page. And so that's not part of the 2 to 3 pages. You should have a separate page at the beginning that's just the title page, and I'm not really picky about what you put on there, and so title, maybe your name, maybe the book that you've read, some things like that on your title page. And that's a separate page. And then same with your resources page at the end. This is a page that's just going to list your resources there. And I'm not picky about formatting as long as you list your resources. And so resources are things that you may have referenced, like removing barriers to happiness, if you reference that, or all is safely gathered in. If you're referencing these in your paper, you want to include those on your resources page. And like I say, separate from the 2 to 3 pages, that's your main body. And so really your paper should be 4 to 5 pages long, including a title and the resources page, where you have the title page and then 2 to 3 pages. That's your main body. And then the last page being your resources page. Okay, and so 5 points total for those things there. And then your next 5 points will be to identify critical concepts or principles from your book. And so you get 1 point for each of those 5 that you identify from your book. Then here comes the main body of your points. And so where your main points are coming from. And so for each of those 5 principles that you've identified, you need to compare them to the gospel. And so make sure it is for each of those. And so it's 3 points each doing this comparison. And so make sure it's not just a general comparison of all of those. Address each of your principles and compare each of those to the gospel. And same thing on this reflection part, which is the next part. You should reflect on how each of those 5 concepts or principles will help you in your personal finances. And so make sure that's a reflection for each of the principles and not just one general reflection. And so that's 3 points for each principle right there for a total of 15 points. And so that's going to be the main body of your paper right there. And so kind of maybe a good outline that you can follow is starting with some kind of introduction paragraph where you identify your principles and tell, okay, this was the book I read, here's 5 things I learned from it, right? And then, you know, for each of those principles, have a paragraph where you say, okay, for this principle, here's a comparison to the gospel, and here's my reflection, how it can help in my personal finances, and then do the same thing in the following paragraphs, right, for each of those principles, and then some kind of conclusion, right? And you don't have to do it that way, but might be a good way that you can be sure to include everything. Good luck on this. Please do let me know if you have any questions. You can leave those as a reply to this announcement, and I will be happy to respond to those.